We're starting the 6 lines from the top, Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. By Minei. So by Minei Rabbi Avina Mirav Sheshes. Bas Hanizones Min Ha'achin. If you have a daughter, a girl, whose father passed away, and now she is being provided for by essentially by her brothers, which is really the estate of the father. So Maisa Yadeha Lemi, who gets her wages. So Rashi just tells us that part of the ksuba, part of the stipulation of the ksuba is that if a man passes away, then the brothers, his money is obligated to support his daughters until they become a bogeret. So that's part of the ksuba. So now the question is, once she, that's what one of the conditions in the ksuba is.
Yeah, but she's not. Is this a married daughter we're talking?
No, she's not a married daughter.
So what does the ksuba have to do with her?
The ksuba, because it's his wife's daughter, meaning because the Yerusha is going to go to the boys, so then the daughter can be left without anything.
Father's daughter too.
Yeah, exactly. But the brothers are going to inherit before the daughter.
Right, but
so therefore,
a man died. He has a daughter and a son. So where's the ksuba? How's the ksuba come into this?
Because you have to provide for the wife as part of the ksuba, and part of providing for the wife is also providing for his daughters. Her daughters now, which is the same. How is she going to have any money? I mean, that's part of the condition in the ksuba. So the question is, who gets her wages? Do we say b'makom av kaimi? Do we say that the brothers take over for the father? And and the same way the father used to get her wages, now the brothers get her wages. Oh, dilma lo dami la'av. Maybe it's not similar to the father. Why? Over there was the father himself. Initially, it was the father himself who gave the daughter the food, and therefore her wages went to her father almost to pay back, almost in that respect. But when it comes to the brothers, they're not really giving her it's really the father's estate which is providing for the daughter, so maybe they don't have right to her wages. Rav Shesh's answers, Amar lei tzinitzua, we've taught the following: Almana nizones minichse yisomim u'maisei yadeh shelahen. When it comes to an almana, a widow, so she has to be provided for by from the property of the yisomim, as in from the estate of her husband, has to support the woman. But her wages then go to the brothers. So if that's the case for the almana, so Rav Sheshes wants to assume the same should be true for the daughter as well, that she's provided for by the estate, but then her wages are paid to the brothers. So we say midami. Now you can't really. Can you really compare an almana, a widow, to the daughter? Almanasa lo nichale beharvacha, bito nichale beharvacha. When it comes to his widow, he doesn't need her to have harvacha. It's not important for her necessarily to have extra money. As long as she is provided for from the estate, that's enough. And therefore, if she's going to earn any other money, that should go back to the brothers. However, for the daughter, he does nichale barvacha. He wants his daughter to have extra money. Why? To pay off as a dowry. He wants to be able to give more money to whoever's going to marry his daughter. Therefore, even though it could be the almana is going to give the money back to the brothers, the daughter is not necessarily going to have to do so. Then the Gemara asks, "Lememra debito adifa leme almanaso." You want to tell me here that the daughter is better than the almana? V'hamar Rabbi Yavam Rabbi Yossi asu almana etzel habas kibatz etzel ha'achin. We b'nechasi mu'atin. We treat the widow, when there's a widow and a daughter, we treat them the same way as we treat a daughter with the brothers when there's only few possessions. So Rashi just tells us b'nechasi mu'atin. She'ein behen kidei parnasas 12 chodesh. Let's say they don't have enough money to provide for everyone for 12 months. Kedamer perak misha meis b'av basra. B'ktani habanos yizonu. It says that the daughters should excuse me. The daughters will get whatever money there's to be had. V'habani mishalu al psachim. The brothers are going to have to go out begging for money. So therefore, let's continue now. So the Rabbi Yossi says, "Asu man etzel bas kebatz etzel achim nechasi muatin," meaning, "Ma habas etzel achin habas nizones v'achin nishalu al psachim." The same way, with the daughter when there's daughters, when there's, let's say, boys and girls, so the daughter's going to get the money, whatever little money they have, and the brothers are going to be forced to beg for the rest. Af almana etzel habas. So too, if the two people who need the money are the almana, are the widow and the daughter, so almana nizones, the almana is going to take the money from the estate. The habas tishal al psachim, and the daughter is going to have to be going around begging for money. So how can you tell me that the almana is better off? How can you tell me initially that the daughter is better off, that the widow's wages go back to the brothers and the daughter's wages she can keep, but when it comes to begging for money, it's the widow who gets the money and the daughter who has to go out and beg? So the Gemara answers, okay, we're talking about two different realms. Le'inyan zelusa, when it comes to being degraded, so it's not so nice to have to go around begging for money. So almenaso adifale, so better off that his almana, his widow, doesn't have to do that, and his daughter's going to go be begging for money. But le'inyan harvacha, when it comes to having these extra wages, so bito adifale, it's better. He'd rather that his daughter have these extra wages so she can pay as a dowry, as opposed to the almana. So we make this distinction that the almana is better in one regard and the daughter is better in another regard. So now, Meisi Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asked the following question based on our Mishnah. We said yesterday that any wages or a mitzia, even if the daughter even didn't collect it in her lifetime, as long as she already did the work, as long as she was earned it already, even if she didn't collect it yet, so then it already becomes the father. The father already has rights to it, and if he dies, then it goes to the brothers. So taima, now we make a diuk. The reason that it goes to the brothers is because she earned it when her father was still alive. But if she earned this after the father had already died, la'atzma, she keeps it herself. So my love benizones. So isn't our mission time in a case where the girl is being provided for by her brothers, but nevertheless, if she does work after the father dies, she keeps it. So it seems to reject what Rav Shesha said. Rav Shesha said again that it went to the brothers, and here it implies that she can keep it herself. Lo, not the case. B'she'ena nizones. No, you can't bring a proof for our Mishnah, because perhaps our Mishnah is in a case where she wasn't being provided for by her brothers. And if she wasn't being provided for by her brothers, then you could say, obviously, then she's not going to have to give them her wages. And that's what the Gemara says. But if the case is where she's not being provided for by her brothers, then what's the whole chiddush of the Mishnah? It's obvious. It's very obvious that it's obvious on the one hand that if her father's alive, that might say Adeha goes to her father. And at the same time, if she's not being provided for by her brother, it's obvious also that if she's not being provided for, I guess either by her father or her brother, she's not going to have to give them the wages. So what's the chiddush? My lememra, meaning afilu lemanda amar yachol harav lomar le'eved ase imi ve'eni zancha. Even according to the opinion that says that a master can tell his servant, who is an eved knaini, that you can do work for me almost, and I'm not going to provide food for you. That only applies to a non-Jewish slave. It doesn't say the word imach. The pasuk it's referring to is referring to the psukim. We're talking about how you have to treat your slave, and it says imach. So the implication there, you only have to treat him to that higher standard if he's Jewish. If he's not Jewish, you don't have to treat him to that same standard. Aval eved ivri dichse be imach. But for an eved ivri where it says imach, lo, you're not allowed to just say, oh, you do work for me and I'm not going to provide for you. So if you can't say that to an Eved Ivri, koshkein bito, you're not going to be allowed to say that to your daughter. So then the question is, so what's the chiddush here? Meaning, if he's providing for her, so then obviously the wages are going to go. If she's not providing for her, then she's not going to have to give over the wages. So what is the chiddush in the Mishnah? So Amarabba Barula Lo Nitzracha Ella Lehadafa. We need it to teach the following: that if she makes Lehadafa, that means beyond, she makes extra money. So let's say now her brothers are supporting. So we're talking about a case where they're not supporting her. So therefore, it's clear that Maaseh Yadeha, whatever she earns, whatever she needs to live on. So she needs $20 a month in order for food and whatever to live on. So if she's earning $20 a month, it's clear that it's hers. The question is, let's say she's earning $30 a month. So it's clear that $20 will go to her. What's the status of that extra $10? So the Chiddush of the Mishnah is telling us that even though she's not being provided, if she's not being provided, I guess even though she's not being provided for by her brothers, she's not going to have to give them the extra money. They have no right in that extra money. So the Chiddush of the Mishnah tell us that even beyond what she needs for herself, they still have no rights to it, and she will be able to keep it. To which the Gemara responds, Amar Rava, Gavra Rabba Krav Yosef lo yada diika ha'adarfa bekamotiv tiyufta. That's such an obvious answer. You think this great Rav Yosef who asked this question from our Mishnah didn't understand the principle of hadafa, that he wouldn't know that that would be the answer to his problem? So what kind of question is that? So Ella Amar Rava, Rav Yosef masnisin gufa kashele. The truth is actually Rav Yosef's problem was an inherent problem in the Mishnah itself. So what's the problem he's dealing? What's the inherent problem? Diktani maise yadeha umitziasa afopi shelo gavsa. Because the Mishnah said that any wages and any mitzia, any lost objects she finds, even if she didn't collect it, it goes to the father. So then the Gemara asks, Mitziyasa Mangavia, what do you mean lost object for which she hasn't collected wages? That doesn't make any sense. If it's a lost object, if she found it already, she's collected it. If she hasn't found it yet, I mean, who's she collecting it from? What does that mean? What does that even mean to talk about a mitzia that, in terms of collecting, that she hasn't collected yet? So really what it says is, so what the Gemara says is that really how it should read, sorry, elalav hachi kamar. This is how it should read. Maise yadeha kim tziasa. The way we should read the Mishnah is that we treat maise yadeha the same way we treat a mitzia. Meaning, ma mitziasa b'chaye ha'av la'av la'achar misasa av la'atzma. When it comes to finding a lost object, so if you found it when your father was alive, if the girl found it when her father was alive, it goes to the father. If the girl finds it after the father dies, then she keeps it. So too, af maiseh yadeha nami. So too when it comes to her own. So too when it comes to her wages. Af maiseh yadeha nami b'chaye ha'av. If the father's alive, it goes to the father. La'av. La'achar misasav, after the father passes away, la'atzma shma'mina. So he says the whole question Rav Yosef had actually wasn't the question really related to what we were talking about before. It's a question in general, how do you understand the Mishnah? How do you understand that line? And the way we should read it is that really we should just treat the mitzia the same way we are going to treat the maiseh yadeha. Mitzia, if the father's alive, it goes to the father. If he's dead, she keeps it. So too maiseh yadeha, if the father's alive, it goes to her, it goes to the father. If the father's dead, then she keeps it herself. The Gemara continues. Itmar nami, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Bas hanizones min ha'achin, maiseh yadeha la'atzma. So Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav that if a daughter is provided for by the brothers, then she gets to keep her maiseh yadeha. So this is arguing with Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes before wanted to suggest that if she's basan izones min ha'achin, maiseh yadeha la'achin. So here we're arguing and saying no, if she's being provided for by the brothers, nevertheless she can keep her maiseh yadeha. Amar Rav Kahana my taima. What is the reason? Why is it that she can keep her wages? So dichsiv, because the pasuk tells us, "V'hisnachaltem osam livnechem acharechem." When it is referring to non-Jewish slaves, it says you are able to almost bequeath them to your children. That if you own a non-Jewish slave, then your children will inherit them. V'hisnachaltem osam, they are going to inherit the evet knainim. And now we're going to make a drasha from there. Osam livnechem. The Evet Knaini, that can be given over as a Yerusha to the children. But V'lo B'nosechem Livnechem, but your daughters can't be given over as an inheritance to the brothers. What does that mean? Magid she'ein adam morish zechus bito livno. What's telling you is that the father had certain rights to the daughter. One of the rights the father had was ma'aseh yadeha, that the father gets the wages that the daughter earns, but he's not able to give that right over to his children, so the father gets it, but his children, the achin, don't get that right. And therefore, even though she is bas hanizones mina achin, even though she's being provided for by them, nevertheless, she gets to keep ma'aseh yadeha. So, maskif la Rabbi. So, Rabbi asked the following question: Ve'ema b'pitoy habas uknasos v'chavalos akasu medaber. Well, it's true that maybe they don't get all the rights to the daughters, but maybe the rights it's talking about is pitoy, is when you have to pay her for being seduced, and any other knas, any other fine she's entitled to, or chavala if she's injured. So maybe that is what the brothers don't have a right to inherit, but maybe everything else they do. But maybe when it comes to ma'aseh yadeha, they do have the right. So v'chein tana, and so to Rabbi Chanina, and that's what Rabbi Chanina actually teaches. Bepito yabatu knasu v'chavalos akasu medaber. So Rabbi Chanina thinks that pasuk is actually referring to only those categories: pito yabas, knas, chavalos, and not ma'aseh yadeha. So here we have another shita saying that no, it seems to be similar to Rav Sheshes, that no, perhaps this pasuk. You think this pasuk tells us that you don't have any rights to the daughter? So maybe, but they're saying no, maybe that's only some of the rights. That's only referring to the knasos and the chavalos and etc. But that doesn't refer to the ma'aseh yadeha. Now the Gemara almost takes a side note for a second here. Chavalos. So the Gemara asking, why do you need to teach us that chavalos, the brothers don't, have the rights to when she's injured? Sarah the gufaninu, that's her own pain, and Rashi tells us that Sarah lo zachi lerachman alav, even the father doesn't get the tsar. If a daughter is injured and she experiences pain, she gets the money. The father doesn't even have rights to that money. So if the father doesn't have rights to that money, why would you ever think that we need a pasuk to tell us that the brothers also don't have rights to that money? So Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, what's the case? Shepatza bifaneha, she was injured in her face, and therefore, since she was injured in her face, Rashi tells us the afchesa mikaspa, her value has gone down, and since since the father has the ability to marry her off, since the father has the ability to marry her off, therefore he would actually get the money because her value has now been, say, depreciated. And therefore, since the father has rights to it, therefore we need to exclude to tell you that the brothers, even though the father does have rights to it, the brothers do not have rights to it. So the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Zera, Amar Rav Matna, Amar Rav, Ve'amri la, Amar Rebbe Zera, Amar Rav Matna, Amar Rav. So the names are very, very similar. The only distinction between these two things is Rav Zera and Rebbe Zera, and they're the same person. So why there are two different statements of how it's made? Because Reb Zera lived both in Eretz Yisrael and in Babel. They only had smicha in Eretz Yisrael. They didn't have smicha in Bavel. And therefore the question was, at what point did he make this statement? Did he make this statement before he went to Eretz Yisrael, or did he make it after he went to Eretz Yisrael? Oh, thank you. So that's what Rashi tells us, that if you think it's Rav Zera, so that's before he went to Eretz Yisrael, it's before he got his smicha. If it's Rebbe Zera, then he made the statement after he went to Eretz Yisrael, once he already had smicha. So that's the question. We're talking about the same people. So either way, what's the statement they make? Bas hanizones min ha'achin, if the daughter is provided for by the brothers, ma'aseh yadeha la'atzma, she can keep her wages. Dichsiv, the same pasuk we just saw, bisnachaltem osam livnechem acharechem. Osam livnechem, again, the Eviknainim can be inherited by your sons. Below, benosechem livnechem, but your daughters cannot be inherited to your sons. Magid, again, she'ein adam morish schus bito livno. So this shita follows the original way we learned it, that it tells us that nobody can inherit the rights to the daughter, only the father has these rights, and nobody else can have these rights. So Amr le Abime bar Papi, Shakud Amra. Shakud is somebody who was very diligent. So the diligent one said this. Shakud Manu. So who is that? Shmuel. So we're saying Shmuel made this statement, but we just said Harav Amra. We just said the statement was in the name of Rav, not Shmuel. So Ema Afshakud Amra. Okay, so perhaps Rav said it, and also Shmuel said it. They both agreed that that the brothers do not get Maaseh Yadeha, even though they're providing for her. So Amar Rav Bar Amemar Rav Ashi Hachi Amri Nahardai in Nahardai the Hilchsa Kavase de Rav Sheshes. They said the halacha is like Rav Sheshes. Rav Ashi Amar Hilchsa Kavase de Rav. Rav Ashi says the halacha follows Rav. The Hilchsa Kavase de Rav. And Lamais we paskin like Rav that the daughter's wages la'atzma, even if she's being provided for by the brothers, she can keep her own wages.
Got no relation to the amount of the kesuba, or not?
No, I don't think so. Meaning the daughter needs to have enough for what? I don't think it matters on the amount.
So before they instituted the ksubas, the rabbanon, then the daughter got nothing and no support after father's death.
I don't know. Yeah,
that's what I was saying. I just thought because of the daughters of Benos, was it
Slovcha? But they inherited because there's no sons.
So there is some connection to the.
If there's sons, and she doesn't get. Yeah. So the next Mishnah, Hame'ares es bito v'girsha. So you send off your daughter to be engaged, and then she's divorced. Irsa v'nis armala. She gets engaged again, and then she becomes a widow. Ksubasa shalom. So both ksubas are collected by the father. Hisiya v'girsha, let's say he marries her off now and she's divorced. Hisiya v'nis armala, marries her off and then she becomes a widow. Ksubasa shalah, she collects both ksubas. The reason being because once the father marries her off, he no longer has, once he marries her off once, he no longer has any more rights to marry her off or do anything again. Therefore, she becomes, you could say, independent, and therefore she would collect both.
What do you mean both?
Well, there's two cases here. In both cases, there's two marriages.
They're two separate.
There's two separate ksubas to be collected. So in the first case, when both of them were just irisin, the father collects both. Now when it's nisuin, she collects both.
Presumably it's the second one that's nisuin, otherwise it would only be one.
Both of them? What do you mean?
In the first case, it was irisin, divorce, irisin, death.
Yeah.
So in the second case, it has to be irisin, divorce, nisuin.
No, it's nisuin, divorce, nisuin, death.
Then he wouldn't have rights to anything.
That's the shita.
I thought you said he has rights only to the first.
No. Sorry. So the shitas chachamim again. The first case when there's two erisins, the father gets both. When there's nisuin, when there's the cases of the two nisuin, the daughter gets both. And now we're going to see the middle opinion is Rabbi Yehuda.
So what about if the first one is erisin and the second one is nisuin?
If the first one is erisin and the second one is nisuin, then the father should get the first and the daughter should get the second. That's just not, that case isn't listed in the Mishnah.
It's the same girl, it doesn't matter.
It's the same girl.
Just weird, she had a lot of bad luck.
No, not four times. Oh, no. Two cases here. It's the same girl who's that. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer gives the middle ashita harishona shel av. He thinks actually that the first one, in the second case, when she's married and then divorced, so the father gets the first one, and then the daughter gets the second one. The Gemara is going to explain why. And Amrullah, they said, well, what do you mean? Misha hisiya in lavia reshus, but no, once she's married, then the father has no more rights to her, and therefore the father shouldn't get any.
When you said married, you mean nisuin?
Nisuin, yes. So now the Gemara is just going to side point at the beginning. Taima dihisiya begirsha hisiya v'nis armala. Again, the Gemara is almost saying that it was dafka when it said that she married and was divorced, married and was widowed. Aval nis armala tre zimni. If she became a widow twice, tu lo chazia linsube. She actually wouldn't be allowed to marry again. Ve'agav orche kasati montana kerebi, and therefore, by the way, it's teaching us that the halakha is like Rabbi, the Amar betrays Ibnei Havya Chazaka. This came up in Yevamos. Generally, Chazaka is 3 times. When it comes to Inyanei Nefashos, when it comes to life and death situations, we say Chazaka is established with 2 times. And therefore, if a woman marries twice and kills both her husbands, so we treat her as if she's a woman who kills her husbands, and therefore she's not allowed.
She didn't kill them. Their husbands died.
No, I understand, but that's how we view her. That's why nobody else can marry her. No, we don't mean that she actively killed killed him, but there's something about her that ends up killing her husband, not in a way which makes her liable. Okay, and therefore she's not allowed to remarry.
Why do we think such? Why does the Gemara?
I don't know. There's some sort of, again, also it depends on the situation. I think the assumption in the Gemara, if I'm not mistaken, is also that we don't see any. It's not like the husband was sick beforehand. If there's other causes here, then we're not going to blame it on the wife. It seems like there's no other causes, and I don't know if it's something physical. I don't exactly know what it's based on. Yeah. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer Harishona Shalav. So Rabbi Yehuda again was that she said that the first one belongs to the father and the second one to the daughter. So my time with Rabbi Yehuda. What is the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda based on? So Rabbi Yosef Darmi Tarvayu Hoil Umishas Irusin Zacha Bohen Ha'av. So they both say because from the time of Erusin, the reason why Rabbi Yehuda thinks the father has rights to it is because they think the chiyuv of the ksuba begins from the time of Erusin. And at the time of Erusin, the father still has rights to the daughter. And therefore, since the obligation of the ksuba starts in the time of Erusin, the father has rights to that first ksuba. Obviously, then once she gets married, then he no longer has rights, and therefore the second one he's not going to get it. So Mesiv Rava, but now we ask a question. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Harishona Shalav. Rabbi Yehuda says the first one's the father's Umo de Rabbi Yehuda, but he also agrees Bime'ares as Bito Kishi Katana. If you again send her off to be engaged when she's a Katana, and then Ubagra, then she becomes a Bogeres. Once she becomes a Bogeres, the father no longer has rights to marry her off. The Achar Kach Nise. So when she gets married, she only gets married once she's a Bogeres. So Rabbi Yehuda agrees she'ein le'aviha rishuspa. So Rabbi Yehuda agrees that the father doesn't get to collect that first ksuba. So Amai, but why not? Hachanami lema hoil mishas erusin zacha bahen ha'av. If Rabbi Yehuda thinks everything begins mishas erusin, then who cares that she became a Bogeres in the middle? He sent her out to be engaged mishas erusin. The obligation of ksuba begins at shas erusin, at the time when the father still had rights to the daughter. So therefore, he should have rights to collect the ksuba. But here, Rabbi Yehuda is agreeing that the father has no rights. So if he has no rights here, how can Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah say that the father has rights? Make your pick. If it's going mishas erusin, then be consistent. Here, it seems like in our Mishnah he's following shas erusin, but in the Gemara he's following nisuin. So make up your mind. So Ela itmar hachi itmar. So no, because we change it. Rabbi Yosef Darmi Tarvayu hoil uvir shuso nichtavin. No, it's not that it goes after the time of Erusin. It goes after when the ksuba was written, and generally the ksuba was written right before nisuin. So in the first case, she was still a ketana when the ksuba was written. Since she was still a ketana or not when it was written, the father gets rights to it. In the second case, she was already a Bogeres by the time she got married. Therefore, the ksuba was written at a time when she was a Bogeres, at a time when the father no longer has rights to the daughter. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda agrees in that case that the father will not be able to collect from that ksuba. Then the Gemara asks, Umikva me'emas gavya. It's almost a separate question, meaning, at what point is she able to start collecting from the ksuba? Meaning, in general, in halacha, if you collect money from somebody and they don't have, and you have a shtar, and they don't have what to pay you, so then you can be what we call toret min halekuchos. Meaning, let's say somebody owes you money. And at the time when they owed you money, they had 50 fields. Then a year later, when time comes back, they don't have any fields, they don't have any money to give you. So what you can do is, since you had that loan when he still owned all those 50 fields, you had a lien on all those fields. And therefore, even if the guy who owed the borrower sold the field to other people, the one who owes him money, the one who's owed money, can go to one of the people he sold the field to and take the field as his own. We call it torif min halekuchos. So you can almost take it away from the ones who bought it.
What's the remedy for the fellow who bought the field?
No.
He should have known better.
Yeah.
Because there's a shtar, that's the whole idea. That's why you need a shtar. If it's a milva b'shtar, and therefore, since it's documented, people should know about it. They should know who he owes money to, and it could be that he can go back, but then he's not going to have any money to go back to. So what the Gemara. So therefore, that's the question here. At what point does this lien begin for the woman that when she needs to collect her ksuba, she can go ahead and take it from these other people? So Amar Rav Huna. So Rav Huna says, Mane Masai Min Ha'erusin. So the first 100 or 200, depending whether she's Nalmana or Besula, so that starts Mishas Erusin. And Rashi tells us, the Mitakanta Durabanan Mechayev. Since those are a Chiyuv Durabanan, the first 100 or 200, so since it's a Chiyuv Durabanan, that obligation begins Mishas Erusin. The Tosefes, but everything beyond that initial 100 or 200, so that only starts Min Hanisuin, because that's not a Takana Durabanan, then you wait for the shtar to be written in order for that lien to begin. For Rav Asi Amar, no. Echad zeh ve'echad zeh min hanisuin. He says, no, both, you can only start collecting from the time of nisuin.
So would that mean that this thing, even though a shtar was written after nisuin, after Erusin, then for Freya, then it goes back to the time of...
According to Rav Huna.
So the date is really retroactive. That's what we're saying. Even though the shtar itself is later.
The obligation kicks in.
Sorry, say that again?
Let's say the shtar is written on February 12th.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Erusin was on December 12th.
Okay.
3 months before.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we're saying for Freya that it kicks in from December 12th?
According to Rav Huna, the 100 and 200 kicks in from December 12th. Everything else kicks in February 12th. According to Rav Asi, everything kicks in from February 12th.
It's not Lamafreya. It's that it started December 12th.
Yeah, except that what's written in the shtar, it says, but the shtar doesn't write December 12th. That's the Mafreya only in the sense because the shtar doesn't write it. But no, it's not the Mafreya because that's when the chiyuv began.
Right,
that's what Rav Huna is saying.
In terms of the shtar, it is.
Yes. So now the question is, Umi Amar Rav Huna Hachi, does Rav Huna actually believe this? Veha itmar, hotzia alav shtei ksubos. So let's say the case is a woman takes out 2 ksubas. Achas shel masayim, achas shel shalosh meos. One worth 200, one worth 300. And the one worth 200 is from a previous date. So let's say the 200 one is from January, 300 is from April. Ve'amar Rav Huna, Basa ligvos masayim, and Rav Huna says if she's coming to collect the 200 ksuba, so go v'mizman rishon, she can collect from that first date. Shalosh meos, if she's coming to collect the 300, go v'mizman sheni, she can collect from the second date. V'im isa, but if you believe, this Rav Huna, this making this distinction between the 200 mishas erusin, etc. Tigvi masayim mizman rishon, why can't she collect the 200 from the first date? Umeya mizman sheni. So then the Gemara asks, well, if you take that svara, so tigbe chamesh meos, just let her collect 500 if she has 2 ksubas, right? Chamesh meos kulam masai mizman rishon tlas mea mizman sheni. 200 from the first day and 300 from the second day.
This is from the same husband?
Yes, it's the same person.
Why would she have 2 ksubas?
So, that's the point. Because now it's going to say, Ella chamesh meos my time alo gavia. Why can't she collect all 500? Kevan delo kasavla, since he didn't write to her tzavisi ve'osifis lach tlas mea amasayim, since he's not adding on extra money, since in the second ksuba he didn't say, I'm adding on this 300 to the 200, hachi kamarla. This is what he's telling her. He's giving her a choice almost. Imisman rishon gvias. If you want to collect from the first one, so gvia masayim, you only get 200. Imisman sheni gvias, gavia tlas mea. If you want to collect from the second time, then you get 300. So hachanami. Hainu taima delo gavia. So for the same reason, she can't collect 200 from the first time and 100 for the water. Midelo kasavla osifis lach mea amasayim achule achilta lishibuda kama. So essentially what he's saying is that when you have these 2 shtaros, you're writing the second one, it means that she's giving up on the first one. And since she's giving up on the first one, she can't make this distinction of the 200. But in the case with what we mentioned before, there isn't 2 ksubas, there's 1 ksuba. She's never giving up on the initial shibud, and therefore, even according to Rav Huna, she can collect the first 200 from the earlier date, and then everything else, mishas nisuin. Okay, we'll stop here.